Hi, happy Thursday. Allegra here, your brain science based productivity and time management expert. All here to tell you how to have more time and energy in your life because who doesn't need more of that? And if you've been following me for the last couple months, then you know that I am leaning into self care right now because the world is a weird place right now. I know that I'm someone who struggles with, you know, how I feel with, I don't know, I don't, anxiety feels like it has such a medical connotation nowadays, but, anxiety, fear, uncertainty, there's a lot going on for that. And the way that I find to exercise some type of control over how I feel is by leaning into my self-care. So I finished a 6-part series on my skincare routine because you might not realize that touching your face releases the same brain chemicals as getting a hug. And that's why it's so valuable to do a skincare routine. And now I am into the things that I put in my body. So last week I talked about what I drink. Today I'm going to talk about what I eat. Next week I'm going to talk about the supplements I take. Then I'm going to get into movement. I'm also going to talk about relationships and sleep and creativity. So that's all coming. And if you want to find all of these, I'm calling it a season of self care. If you want to find all of the season of self care podcasts, go to what limit or time. I don't know why it's not coming up here. I will have to grab the link. Oh, no, not there either. I will have to grab the link and then I will paste it into the podcast so that you can see it. And it will also be in my show notes, of course. So here is the link. And also too, if you scan this QR code here about the 3 steps, my 3-step hydration ritual, it will also get you to that link for all of the self-care episodes. Okay, here we go. So it is my website, bywdreams.mailerpage.com/season self-care. That's where you can find all of the videos. And if you're joining me live, welcome. I do see your comments. So if you have a question or something that I need to address, I am happy to address it. And also, if you are looking at the recording, this does go up as the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. You can watch it on my website and I think on Spotify, or you can listen wherever you listen. And as always, be sure to like and subscribe. It costs you nothing and it helps me to know what is resonating with you and helps me in the algorithm. So if you are new to my podcast, welcome. I am the author of these 4 short read books that are all designed to help you get more time and energy. And if you don't know where to start, then start with this one, 3, 2, 1, done. 3 simple strategies to get your to-do list done. It's almost like you're going to create time. It just helps give you 3 strategies that you can immediately put into practice that will help you get out of overwhelm and I don't know where to start and into doing things. And by the way, I don't expect anyone to implement any of my tips perfectly. You might take my tip and say, "Oh, I know a way to apply this that's going to help me even more." Fantastic. I encourage, I feel like every little piece of information that you get just helps you to understand yourself more. And so that is exactly perfect. And there's been a bunch of changing in my listenership recently. For a long time, so the US is always number 1 in terms of listenership. And then for a long, long time, Brazil was number 2, but there's been a bunch of changing. And so I have been giving some interesting facts about some of the places that are now showing up as listeners because I just don't know anything about some of these places, or I haven't been to some of these places, and it's very interesting. So Bangladesh is now in my top 10 of listeners, and so many interesting facts about Bangladesh. Now, by the way, I knew the general vicinity of where Bangladesh was, but I didn't know exactly where it was. So if you think of India as my thumb. Maybe I should do it this way. India as my thumb. And then this is the Bay of Bengal. Bangladesh is right here. And then it's Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia. And then the islands start coming off here. So that's where it is. And it, of course, is home to the most Bengal tigers in the world, probably not surprisingly, which I don't know if you know, but a lot of tigers live in swamps. I actually watched this great video called Swamp Tigers with my kiddo, who's a big animal person. And so that was interesting to learn. So lots of Bengal tigers there. It's interesting in that it is the largest, it has the largest continuous beach in the world. And it has the largest vegetarian population in the world. Bangladeshis consume only 4 kilograms, so that's not, roughly 9 pounds of meat per person per year. Also, it's one of the least obese countries in the world. And as one can imagine, with its location to water, it is also one of the countries most at risk of climate change, rising sea levels. So very concerning issue. And then you might have heard about Muhammad Yunus, who won the Nobel Peace Prize for microlending. He is Bangladeshi, and he's the only Bangladeshi to have won a Nobel Prize. And the world's longest natural beach, Cox's Bazar, is in Bangladesh, 120 kilometers of unbroken beach. So very interesting. Thank you for joining me from wherever you are listening. And I'd like to pull a card from this little deck right here and get an idea. It always helps me get some inspiration. I could really use it today, by the way. Oh, I wanted to tell you about a book I'm reading. I'm reading a book called Mother Hunger. And it's interesting because the way the book was introduced to me is, if you hear that title and you think, I know exactly what that is, then this book is probably for you. And that is how I felt when I heard this title. And it's a fascinating book. I really think everyone should read this book. Anyone who grew up at least in Western culture should read this book, because it isn't just about motherhood. It's also about the patriarchy and misogyny and how it shows up uniquely in our country and how that affects mothering. And I've learned a lot from it. I think this is the first nonfiction book that's ever made me cry. So I will put it in the links below. Definitely, I actually have recommended it to a couple of single dads I know, because I said, you should read this, because this might be something that you see in your daughters at some point. And I highly, highly recommend it. So check it out, Mother Hunger. Okay. The things that divide us are far less important than those that connect us. Rachel Naomi Remen. The things that divide us are far less important than the things that connect us. Man, is that this? That is the perfect saying for right now. There's this person that I follow on social media, and her name's Koji, Cogey, I think is how it's pronounced. And she posted something the other day that said, "Isn't it easier to not kill people than to kill people?" It's like, yes, it is. Like, the crazy thing is that I think it's easier to be kind. It takes less energy. It takes less strategy and manipulation to just be kind. And I think, don't we all want to feel good? I mean, isn't that sort of as an anthropologist, I can tell you that's one of the things that defines humans, is that we want to avoid pain. And there's so many things going on in the world right now that are causing pain. It would be so much easier for us all to just say, hey, let's decide to feel good together. Let's decide to have peace would be so much easier. And, I think the vast majority of us want peace. The vast majority of us want to live with our neighbors and think good thoughts about them. And if we can just use that power together, either doing whatever you can do, whether it's helping someone directly that you know who needs a ride or some food or some guidance on something, or if it's advocating for others through legal work, or everything matters. Every good thing matters. And if the good thing that you do today is use 5calls.org to call your senators and your representatives and say, hey, I am opposed to the SAVE Act. If you're not familiar with the SAVE Act, check it out. It's going to be voted on shortly, and it's designed to take away the voting rights of anyone who's ever changed their name. So many married women, it's going to affect you. Okay, so go to 5calls.org. They make it so easy. They give you the phone numbers. They even give you scripts if you need help figuring out what you want to say. So 5calls.org, super easy. Sometimes I call every day, whatever it is that's concerning you. 5calls.org. It does make a difference to call. The urgency of your voice makes a difference. You can ask to speak to a live person, or you can leave a voicemail. I think it's more important to call than to email, personally. But okay, 5calls.org. Okay, so let's get into today's topic. Today, I am talking about the foods that I eat regularly in order to keep myself healthy. And repetition is one of the best strategies you can use to save yourself time and energy. Because we have this false belief that thoughts aren't things, and therefore it costs me nothing to just think and think and think and think. And even if that was true, even if thoughts didn't burn up energy, which I will talk about in just a second, you're still taking time. We all know the person who can't make a decision, the chronic overthinker. That wastes time. One of the great things about how I eat is that from Monday to Friday, I pretty much don't have to think, what am I going to eat next? Because I've already thought about it when I decided to introduce this food group into my life. And only on the weekends do I get a little more free flowing. And, I allow thinking about food to be something that is more fun rather than something I have to do. So first of all, it saves that kind of time. Secondly, it saves lots of energy because your brain is actually the most calorie consuming part of your body. It makes up only 2% of your body weight, and yet it can consume as much as 20% of your calories. Okay? 2% of your body weight, 20% of your calories. This is the very reason why our brain developed shortcuts that we call habits that save energy, because your brain wants to save energy in case there's a famine coming. So eating habitually uses my brain's own desire to save calories to help me eat healthy. Now, at first, doing something new is not always easy. And I do have a podcast called The Fresh Start Effect that is all about how to do new things, because again, your brain doesn't want you to do new things because it considers that an excessive use of calories. And so the Fresh Start Effect, my strategy for starting new things, is designed to help you overcome that inherent desire by your brain to be like, whoa, 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 don't do anything new. You got to save those calories. So I can tell you that in college, I don't think I had eaten a fresh piece of food for years by the time I was a senior, and I got really, really sick. You might have heard me tell this story before. I got really, really sick, and I made a commitment to eat healthier, and it still took me a little while to figure out how to introduce fresh foods into my diet on the regular. Um, and I'm going to get to that in a little bit, but I have not always eaten this way. And it wasn't just learning about the benefits of these foods that helped me, but that did help. Like when I learned about all of the good things that these foods can do for me, that really helped because I am an information person, right? When I find out information, I find it interesting. It encourages me to do things. But the other thing too was finding foods that I liked. Like for instance, I have raspberries here. I don't really like blueberries. And you know what? That's okay. I know blueberries are super healthy, but they're just I'm just not really into them. But raspberries, I like. So, I'm not going to tell you to eat things just because they're healthy. But what I am going to do is say, "Hey, can you find healthy things that you like and then eat them regularly?" And by the way, all these foods I'm going to show you here, they have not all been a part of my life forever. In fact, I'm gonna try and introduce them to you in the order of which I added them to my diet so you can see how I think about them, okay? Now, first thing, just so you know, my breakfast and lunch are very automatic. If you saw last week's podcast, then you saw me talk about all the things that I put in this smoothie that I'm currently drinking. Monday through Friday, this is always my breakfast. And then my lunch is always a salad and maybe like one or two other things, which I'll get to in a second. But I like this idea of introducing you to the foods in the order that I was introduced to them. So, first, let's start with sweet potatoes, baked sweet potatoes. My dad was a baked sweet potato fanatic. There were always baked sweet potatoes sitting in our toaster oven. And guess what? There still are. Now, I will say I've changed the sweet potatoes from I like the orange ones, but I've switched to these purple ones because of the extra phytochemicals in purple, and also because I actually just like the taste, and it's called the technical term is mouthfeel. I love the mouthfeel of the purple sweet potato because it actually has lower carb content, which is funny, but it feels starchier for some reason. I think it's just drier than the orange potato. So I bake it on, like 300-degree heat for about 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how fat it is. And then when I eat it, I actually don't just eat it like this. I actually put a little bit of butter and then a little bit of all the pumpkin pie spices. So ginger, cinnamon, be sure I only use real cinnamon. That's a whole nother topic. So ginger, cinnamon, nutmeg, clove. I put a dash of that because those are all really good herbs for you, and also they taste good. So I mix a little bit of butter and those herbs. The butter helps to make some of the nutrients more available to you, bioavailable, especially if you eat the orange sweet potato, because beta carotene is very much a fat soluble vitamin. So sweet potato, love them. I eat them pretty much every day. And sometimes instead of baking them, sometimes I will slice them really thin and cook them in a little bit of ghee and salt. That's my daughter's favorite way, but baking them is just a little bit easier. So that's that. I would say the next food that really helped me to eat healthier that I was introduced to was when I found a green that I really liked. It's important to get a lot of fiber in your diet, and also to get, there's a saying in healthy eating circles called eat the rainbow. So to eat a lot of deep, rich colors. And so kale, this is lacinato kale, also known as dino kale. This is part of what gives my smoothie its color. I also like to use green and red kale, although my family likes green kale almost exclusively. They also enjoy a kale salad. So kale, I learned about kale. I have texture issues. And so one of the reasons why I had trouble eating salads was because I didn't like iceberg lettuce. I found it soggy and bland. And so when I discovered, I don't know, 20-ish years ago that I could eat kale raw, I was like, oh, well, it's way crunchier. It doesn't get soggy. And it has a flavor I like personally. So find the green that you like. I don't like arugula. I think that arugula and radicchio. I don't like those. Some people love them. Awesome. Find the greens that you like. Another green that I love is cilantro, also known as coriander. And cilantro is really good, as are a lot of herbs, for detoxing and chelating. Cilantro specifically is good for chelating heavy metals, which was something I was concerned about before I decided to get pregnant, because I eat a lot of tuna. I've eaten a lot of tuna in my life. And unfortunately, there's a fair amount of heavy metals there. So I eat a lot of cilantro. Some of it goes into my smoothie. I also sprinkle it on any salad that I'm making. So probably about the same time as I learned about kale, I learned about Ezekiel bread and tortillas. Now, I don't care for Ezekiel bread, but I love Ezekiel tortillas. They have this great chew. And the fantastic thing about Ezekiel tortillas is that they have barley, beans, lentils, millet, spelt. Now, there's also wheat in there. But all of those grains are sprouted, which changes the chemical components of those items and makes them more bioavailable. And each tortilla has 7 grams of protein and 5 grams of dietary fiber. So I honestly, these are just my favorite tortillas. They taste so good. And I love to eat them with peanut butter and jelly. Like nut butters and fruit spreads. I always avoid added sugars, right? So nut butters and fruits, it makes a great little snack. And also I eat it with hummus, which I probably should have talked about these next, but garbanzo beans. I love garbanzo beans. They're super good for you, high in iron, which is great for women, and high in fiber. So I eat these with hummus. Do peanut butter and jelly. I'm saying in quotation marks because I don't use jelly, but and I also use them to make wraps. So one of my favorite wraps is hummus and avocado, kale, and tempeh. And I also use them to make quesadillas with my favorite smashed black beans. So I eat a lot of these tortillas. And the great thing is they freeze really well. So I will have like 4 or 5 of them in my freezer at any moment, so that I know that I always have them. And those are great. Okay. Raspberries probably should have come sooner, but raspberries and blackberries are my berry of choice. Strawberries and blueberries, I'm kind of meh about, but I love raspberries and I love blackberries. And, they're just a great way to get a little bit of sweetness. Or if I'm having some Greek yogurt, some full fat Greek yogurt that's plain, I like to sprinkle these in there. Very good. Okay, beans. I am not vegetarian, but I do eat heavily vegetarian, and I try and get beans into every lunch and dinner that I eat. So with my salads, I will sprinkle it. If I'm making, tortilla with I'll use these. They say refried beans, but they're just beans that have been smashed. These are both from Trader Joe's, and I think these are black beans. I usually get the black bean ones. These might be pinto. I don't see. But I usually get black beans because, again, dark colors, high phytonutrients. But I eat black beans or garbanzo beans pretty much every day, either in their whole form or as a patty. I love black bean burgers. I love hummus, which is what garbanzo beans are made out of. So the only way to get enough fiber every day really is by including beans into your diet. This is how, I think I talked about it last week. I talked about how hard it was to get enough fiber in my diet until I added beans on the regular and chia seeds. So chia seeds I eat daily in my smoothie. I also often have some sort of quote unquote chia pudding sitting in the fridge for myself or my husband or my daughter, which chia pudding is simply chia seeds soaked in milk, oat milk, coconut milk, whatever milk you like, with a little bit of cinnamon and maybe a little vanilla if you want, and a little bit of honey or maple syrup. And this is the greatest way to get to up your fiber content, because I do 2.5 tablespoons of these every day, and that gets you 10 grams of fiber, right? So one tortilla, 5 grams, 2.5 tablespoons, 10 grams. Oh, I had this apple here. I do love a crisp little apple. I try not to get the super sweet ones. This is probably around 4 grams of fiber. So again, 10 grams of fiber, 4-ish grams of fiber. So this is how I make sure I get enough fiber in my diet. This is really, it keeps me super satisfied. It also has, great protein in it. So those are the foods that I eat repetitively in order to stay healthy. And it saves me so much mental energy to not have to think every single day, what am I going to have for breakfast? What am I going to have for lunch? What am I have for breakfast? What am I going to have for lunch? And really the only thing I think about is dinner. And that's even pretty automated too, because my family has like our favorites. So we like to do once a week, we do salmon with either gnocchi or risotto and then a vegetable. We do taco night with turkey meat. We do pasta night with vegetarian meatballs. So like they're soy-based meatball. We do, sometimes we do dinner for breakfast, which means we do eggs and, usually it's what we call a breakfast burrito because we use these tortillas. We do deconstructed kebabs, which is usually turkey as well. And I make it like it's almost like a meatloaf, but it's just like, if you think about it, it's just turkey seasoned, spread over a bed of onions that I bake. And then I make a yogurt dip. So yogurt and cucumbers, which is called tzatziki or raita or whatever. Lots of Mediterranean cultures have a name for it. And then I make some rice. We do stir fries very, very regularly. And then once every other week, we do pizza night where we make every pizza from scratch. So, those are pretty much. Oh, I also do a curry, a tofu zucchini. I'm trying to think what else. So I have like 10 maybe dinners. I do a roasted chicken dinner, and then I'll usually use that chicken to make. I have like 10 to 15 dinners that are, healthy enough that I'm satisfied, that I just put into rotation. And things drift out of popularity and back into popularity, just happens. Keeping it automated helps to ensure that I'm not overwhelmed about what to provide for my family. And it also makes it easy in terms of I can walk into a grocery store and just, buy the same things over and over without having to rethink everything and say, oh, what do I need? What do I need this week? What exotic dish am I making this week? And then I also have, similarly, like I have slightly more complicated meals that are like our fun if we want to do something special, if it's someone's birthday or if it's the holidays, fun foods that are a little more time consuming that I know how to make that, are just a little bit special. Oh, I also have this wonderful chicken and lentil dish that I'd love to do. Lentils are also, along with, I should have brought lentils, along with garbanzo beans and black beans, lentils are also a really popular item in our rotation. So for joining me, hopefully you've gotten one piece of information from today's podcast that can help to get started on your journey or journey to the next level in terms of eating healthy without having to overthink it. And by the way, none of these foods are, super. I also like to buy my black beans dried. So I will often make them from it saves a ton of money when you buy dry, but I always have some canned ones in case, I want to the fly that I haven't prepared for. So hopefully you got take you on the next step and in the world we need wherever you're listening. Thanks for being here. And remember, plan makes everything easier.